There is a critical update from the Department for Work and Pensions that affects millions of older people across the UK. If you are over the age of 50, you absolutely need to understand what has changed about the Winter Fuel Payment scheme. In previous years, it was relatively straightforward. If you were of pension age, you likely received the payment to help with heating costs during the coldest months of the year. But now, in the most significant change in over a decade, there are two specific groups who either will not receive the payment at all or will see it clawed back by the government after it's been issued. This isn't just red tape. It could mean a loss of up to £300 for many pensioners who rely on every single bit of support during winter. The changes are already in effect for the winter of 2025 to 2026, and thousands of people will find themselves affected possibly without realizing it until it's too late. The first group at risk are those whose individual taxable income exceeds £35,000 in the current tax year. If you fall into this group, the government will still issue the winter fuel payment, likely around November or December of 2025, but they will recover the full amount through changes to your tax code. In some cases, it could mean a reduction in your future state pension payments, a higher tax deduction from private pensions, or a direct clawback through self-assessment. This change was introduced under the premise of fairness, with the government claiming it's about targeting support to those most in need. But for thousands of pensioners, it will come as a shock when the money they thought was helping them heat their homes is quietly taken back months later. This isn't speculation. The policy is already in place, and HM Revenue and Customs is ready to begin recoveries from higher-income pensioners starting in the new tax year. For people who have spent a lifetime working, paying national insurance, and contributing to society, being told that your support will be reclaimed because your income exceeds an arbitrary threshold can feel like a slap in the face. To understand how this affects you, it's crucial to know that taxable income includes your state pension, private pensions, rental income, and other sources such as interest from savings or investments. It does not matter whether you have paid off your mortgage or live frugally. If your total taxable income for the year exceeds £35,000, you fall into this group. The Department for Work and Pensions will not automatically stop your payment, which is part of the issue. You'll receive it as normal, leading many to believe all is well, but then, by the following spring or summer, HMRC adjusts your tax code and begins to recoup the money. For some, this might be spread out over monthly reductions. For others, especially those who file tax returns, the full amount could be demanded in one go. It's especially difficult for those living on tight budgets who plan their winter heating around receiving this money, only to find it quietly taken back months later. Take, for example, someone like June, a 71-year-old widow living in Cornwall. She draws her full state pension and a modest occupational pension, and her savings yield just enough interest to push her taxable income to £36,000. She's not living extravagantly. She's simply tried to plan carefully for her retirement. She receives the winter fuel payment in early December, just as temperatures begin to drop. She uses the money to cover her heating oil delivery and electricity bills. But come May, her tax code changes. Her personal allowance is reduced. The following month, she notices her monthly pension payment has dropped by over £20. It takes her weeks to understand what happened. When she finally reaches HMRC, she's told that the winter fuel payment was recovered through tax adjustment because she earned too much. For someone like June, this isn't just frustrating, it's deeply unsettling. Now let's turn to the second group of people affected, pensioners living in Scotland. Due to devolved powers, the Scottish Government has introduced its own version of winter support, called the Pension Age Winter Heating Payment. This replaces the traditional winter fuel payment for residents in Scotland. The problem is, many older people living north of the border are still under the impression that the UK-wide payment scheme applies to them. It doesn't anymore. The Scottish system has different criteria, different payment levels, and different timelines. Eligibility is still based on being over state pension age by a specific qualifying week in September, but the payment amounts vary, and in many cases are lower. For example, the typical payment for someone under 80 in Scotland may be just over £200. Those over 80 might receive a little more, but it is not always up to the full £300 seen elsewhere in the UK. And crucially, the Scottish Government is also applying the income recovery rule. So even if you receive the Scottish payment, if your income is over the £35,000 threshold, that money may also be clawed back by HMRC. This creates a landscape where confusion reigns. People who have lived their entire lives in Scotland, worked for decades, and assumed that they'd be treated equally to those in England or Wales are discovering they are subject to a completely different system. It's causing distress, particularly for those who don't have easy access to digital services or aren't confident navigating complex government schemes. For someone like James, a 75-year-old retired engineer in Inverness, the difference in payment schemes and rules feels like an unfair penalty for where he happens to live. He assumed he would receive the full £300 this winter, just like his sister in Newcastle. Instead, he received a lower payment and now has received a letter from HMRC about a change to his tax code due to excess income. The shock of being told that a benefit he never even applied for is now being recouped hits hard. It feels less like a support system and more like a trap. These changes were not well publicized. Many people remain unaware that their income level even matters. For years, the winter fuel payment was a universal support, a recognition that older people face higher heating costs, especially those living alone, on fixed incomes, or with health conditions that make cold weather especially dangerous. Now, with the push toward means testing and devolved administration, that support is no longer guaranteed. And yet, it continues to arrive in people's accounts without warning of the consequences. In truth, it would have been more transparent to stop the payment altogether for higher income individuals, rather than allow it to be issued and later taken back. But by doing it this way, the government avoids upfront controversy while quietly recovering funds later on. It's a tactic that feels underhanded, especially for those who plan their winter spending around the expectation that the money was theirs to use. What can be done? First, it's essential to understand your own financial position. If your income is close to the £35,000 threshold, speak to a tax advisor or pension specialist to understand how your payments will be affected. Some people may benefit from spreading their income over tax years, deferring withdrawals from private pensions, or using ESAs and other non-taxable vehicles to avoid crossing the threshold. Secondly, check your residency status. If you live in Scotland, ensure you know how the pension age winter heating payment works, what you're likely to receive, and whether you need to take any action. Also, remember that the qualifying week, typically in September, determines eligibility. Moving house, spending time abroad, or missing official records during this week could mean missing out entirely. And finally, consider whether you want to opt out. In England and Wales, there is a mechanism to voluntarily decline the payment to avoid future tax recovery, but the deadline is typically in mid-September. Many people are unaware this option even exists until it's too late. This is not about politics. It's about making sure older people are treated with respect, fairness, and transparency. A £300 payment might not seem like much to policymakers, but for many pensioners, it is the difference between turning the heating on or off. It's the difference between buying enough food for the week or skipping a meal. It is not just money, it is dignity, comfort, and peace of mind in the harshest months of the year. And to allow confusion or quiet policy shifts to strip that away is unacceptable. Thousands of people will be affected this winter. They will receive the payment and not understand why their pension payments change. they will feel the loss without knowing where it came from. That's why it's so important to raise awareness now. So, if you are over 50 and planning your winter budget, take a moment to review your income, your location, and your expectations. Speak to friends, neighbors, and family. Many people do not know these changes have taken place. You could be the reason someone avoids a costly mistake. Staying informed is not just about helping yourself, it's about helping your community. These changes may feel small in the grand scheme of government policy, but they have a very real and immediate impact on the lives of ordinary people. No one wants to feel tricked by a government department or caught out by hidden tax adjustments. Clarity, communication, and confidence in what you're entitled to, that's what matters. If you found this information useful, consider subscribing to the channel so you can stay informed about updates like this. Many of the changes to pensions, tax codes, and benefits happen quietly, and having a source you can trust to bring you the facts with no spin helps ensure you're never left in the dark. And if this video has helped clarify something for